Let me ask you, how do you really create a sense of purpose on your team? We've all felt that feeling where you show up to work and you don't feel like you matter, or you feel like the work that you're doing doesn't matter. It's not a good feeling. So today, I want to give you a playbook for how to create a sense of purpose and to make everybody on your team feel like they matter. And that playbook comes from Dr. Zach Mercurio. He's the author of The Power of Mattering, published by the Harvard Business Review. And he's going to give us some practical, actionable tips for how you can go do that on your team this week. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Let's dive in. Well, hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast, a place to be refreshed and encouraged as you lead yourself, your family, and your team. I'm Cal, and I'm really excited to have Dr. Zach Mercurio on the show today. He is an expert on helping leaders understand the importance of mattering and purpose, and he's an expert in helping teams create that. He advises organizations like the U.S. Army, Delta Airlines, Marriott, JP Morgan, USA Wrestling, and the government of Canada. He also teaches with Simon Sinek as one of the Optimist instructors. And today we're going to dive into his book, The Power of Mattering. I also press him on this. Can you really create a culture where people feel like everyone matters? And is it even possible to actually get results if you do that? I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. We're going to get practical. Also, for those of you who were interested in joining the Intentional Leader Lab, but maybe you didn't get the chance to sign up for this cohort. I'm loving my current cohort. It's amazing. We're doing some great work. So if you're interested in joining the next Intentional Leader Lab cohort, that'll kick off in early 2026. You can go to intentionalleaderlab.com to join the waitlist and be the first to know when that launches. Also, if you're interested in working with me, I am opening up just a few slots for one-on-one coaching. You can find a link in the show notes of this episode if you're interested in that. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Zach Mercurio. Zach, I've been really looking forward to a chance to chat with you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Cal. Happy to be here.
So you have just recently come out with a new book called The Power of Mattering. And I'd love to start by just asking you, what is the cost of people feeling like they don't matter at work?
Well, I mean, the first instinct we have as humans is to matter to someone after birth. You know, we reach out our arms and grasp for significance. None of us would be listening right now if at some point we hadn't mattered enough to someone else to keep us alive. So to matter is a primal survival instinct. Now imagine like a newborn, a child reaching out and finding no one. Consider the absolute panic of insignificance. And what happens when our need and instinct to matter is not met is we face incredibly a stress of insignificance. Two things typically happen. We either withdraw, so we stay silent, we withhold, we isolate ourselves, or we act out in desperation. You know, we desperately, frantically reach out for the attention and the significance we're not getting. And both of those things can lead to mental health issues. Not mattering has been connected to things like depression and anxiety, disengagement. One of the most present and prevalent symptoms of not mattering collectively right now is what's been termed a loneliness epidemic. But loneliness is just a symptom. The advice to reduce that loneliness has been to connect more. And the solution has been get on more platforms, send more messages to one another, be in more meetings, especially at work. But we're more connected than ever and we're lonelier than ever. And one of the things that's really important to understand is that loneliness is not an outcome of being alone. It's an outcome of feeling insignificant. It's not the quantity of connections that matter when it comes to loneliness. It's the quality of connections. So disengagement, loneliness, acts of incivility, all of these things are outcomes of feelings of insignificance to one another because it threatens a basic survival instinct. And it's an undercurrent to some of the most pressing issues we're seeing right now.
When you do your work, are you focused more on the leader feeling like they matter, or is it more the leader's responsibility in making sure that the people on the team feel like they matter?
Well, it's both. Mattering is non-directional. Some people ask me, what if my leader doesn't do this for me? And I always say, do you do it for them?
Oh,
But mattering to matter happens through interpersonal interactions. And so we have to go first. I think of leadership as going first, right? So you can lead from any position, but you can't lead without a relationship. And so going first, and for example, if you have a leader that doesn't do this for you, starting asking them about their life, checking in with them, showing them how they make a difference, usually research finds they'll start doing the same for you. So I'll just say that it's non-directional. But in my work, leaders have some architectural power, right? They simply have positional power and responsibility of setting the norm of what happens in a team, what happens in an organization, the rules of engagement for how we're going to be with one another. And that's why I start with leaders, because leaders can set those norms, that this is a place where everybody is going to feel significant, noticed, affirmed, and needed. And that's a non-negotiable. And here's how I do that. And I can model that for you.
how much time, you've probably done this research, how much time do we spend at work? Because I guess I was just thinking about the leader out there who might be thinking, okay, great, Zach, I like the general idea, but it's not really my job to help people feel like they matter. When we come to work, we've got a job to do, and maybe they feel like they matter when they're at with their family or outside of work, but when it comes to the work environment, we just got a job to do, and we kind of clock in and clock out, but that's beyond the scope of my responsibility.
I would argue that it is your responsibility. Everything we say we want in our organizations is usually a lagging indicator of how someone feels. It is almost impossible for anything to matter to a human being who doesn't first believe that they matter. Think about the last time you were motivated and committed to do something that you thought was dispensable or frivolous or futile. Think about the last time you went above and beyond for someone who didn't care for you. I think for so long in organizations, we've expected people to care before they felt cared for. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about leadership is that people should be valued once they add value, but psychologically, it's actually the opposite, right? We have to feel valued to add value. So mattering to matter comes before pretty much everything else we say we want in our organizations. Because if you think about, and I'll invite all of the listeners here to think about this. Think about one financial metric, one productivity metric, one performance metric that is not mediated through a human being and how they feel. Now think about the optimal state of that human being to produce those things. Most of the time people will think, oh, they should be motivated, they should be engaged, they should know that what they're doing is important. That's what mattering is. Mattering is the experience of feeling valued and knowing exactly how I add value. So it's not a nice to have. It's actually a basic human instinct. It's a basic human need. And a leader's responsibility and a leader's craft is people. It's regenerating the energy that people need to accomplish all the things that you want them to accomplish. How much time do we spend in work? We spend about a third of our waking time in work.
Oh, wow.
Over a lifetime. 1/3. How people make meaning in work inevitably affects how they make meaning in life. A lot of people say to me, Zach, this is work, it's not life. That's a false separation. Life happens wherever a human being is living, breathing, and thinking. Right? That includes at work. We bring our basic needs to our work, and actually meeting our basic needs helps us be better at our work.
I go back, I think it was Patrick Lencioni, it may have been when I was interviewing him, said, Cal, one of the reasons that I'm passionate about leadership is I look back at my dad, and he says, if my dad had had a better leader, I would have had a better dad. Have you seen in your research anything that demonstrates that? Like essentially that if people feel like they matter at work, it actually does transfer to a feeling of mattering outside of work, and that it affects other relationships. I mean, I've experienced that anecdotally, but I'm curious, you do the research. Have you seen anything that demonstrates that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some research that shows that a leader has more of an impact on someone's mental health than does their primary care physician or their therapist.
Mm.
There's research out of the UK that shows that. And it's not surprising, right? If we spend all of this time in work, how we make meaning of ourselves affects how we are as a parent, how we are as a family member, a community member. There's two outcomes of feeling that you matter to somebody, especially a leader. And that's that you have self-esteem, which is self-worth. Like you're worthy and you belong and that you're capable. And that capability is also called self-efficacy, the belief that I can do it.
Yeah.
And those things, when we go back into our families, our environments, our homes, those beliefs about ourselves, they transfer to how we talk about ourselves and our work with our kids. People who have high degree of self-worth and capability, they're more emotionally intelligent. They show up more present. They're able to focus their attention. And so all of these things have a huge impact. And again, it's also important to recognize there's a difference between the meaning of work and the meaning in work for somebody. Like someone can work for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Or to climb the ladder. That could be the meaning of work in their lives. A lot of leaders say to me, Zach, well, these people are just here for a paycheck. I pay them, I don't need to appreciate them. That's what the money's for, right?
Right.
But meaning of work is why someone works. Meaning in work is what they experience when they're there. And leaders have immense control over that experience, and that experience of working that comes through relationships is central to self-esteem, self-efficacy, and the productivity and performance and that sense of self it promotes.
This is really good. I want to go to the practical because I'm sure there's leaders out there that are like, okay, Zach, you've convinced me. This is really important. And I'm sure a lot of folks showed up saying, okay, this is really important. So I want to get there. But before we get to the practical, like how do you actually go do this? Let's first talk about why leaders don't care. Because I think most of us would say, yeah, I care about my people, or at least it's important for me to demonstrate care. So a lot of us have either good intentions or we think we are doing this well. But you've written some great work on the many reasons why leaders actually don't care, or at least there's not, if you look at the evidence day to day, they're not demonstrating care.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say to me, Zach, this is common sense. Why do you have a job? You should be able to come on the podcast and just be a good human at work and leave. Shortest podcast episode in history, right? The problem is common sense, not usually common practice. And the reason why the common sense idea of caring has not become common practice is threefold, in my opinion. And the first is that for the last 25 years, we've been able to use these things to communicate with one another. I'm holding up my phone right now.
Yeah.
We've had technology at our fingertips that allows us to communicate with one another via short transactions. And this is not just happening via our phones. It's also happening via Slack, work platforms, peer recognition platforms. We're now doing performance evaluations on a platform. All of these things allow us to communicate in very short digital transactions that allow us to get out of the social situations in which we learn and hone the skills to care. For example, Cal, if you send me some bad news on a project, I can just send you a thumbs down emoji or a sad faced emoji and say, sorry to hear that. Let's catch up next week. When I shut off that platform, when I put my phone down, I don't have to think about you again.
Yeah.
So I don't actually have to sit with you, seek understanding, offer help, show compassion in real time. And the less I use a skill, the less proficient I get at it. And here we are, right? In a situation where 30% of people say they feel invisible at work. In January of 2025, Gallup released its latest employee engagement, and it was at its lowest it's been in a decade. This is despite engagement becoming a $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
Despite well-being programs, DEI initiatives, all of these things we've invested in. And one data point stands out there. And it was just 39% of people agreed that someone at work cared for them as a person. Right? So this skills deficit is huge. So we're losing the ability to care. The second is in the 1960s, an Army psychologist was studying high performing teams, and he couldn't categorize the intangible skills that contributed to high performing teams: listening to one another, building trust, connecting people to a bigger purpose. So he called them soft.
Really?
And he,
That came from an army
yeah,
psychologist.
I came from a military psychologist.
Oh,
Anytime,
man.
I know,
Didn't know that.
anytime, I don't know, I can't remember his name, but I'll send it to you. But anytime we see something as soft or simple, our brain is susceptible to an overconfidence bias.
Yes. Ooh, that's good.
So we think we're better at it than we are. And that's why when you see research, leaders will always rate themselves as great listeners.
Yeah.
And if you survey their followers on how much they felt heard, it's one of the most common sources of negative feedback about leaders is that people don't feel heard, right? So we think we're better at it than we are. And so when we see something as simple, we approach it with less rigor. And so in our organizations, for ourselves, we've approached these skills with less rigor. I mean, less than 2% of the world's population gets any formal education on how to listen well.
Yeah.
Right. And then one final piece, the third piece, is that we're often in environments that incentivize us not to do this. You know, you can't rely on someone to be morally good in a system that incentivizes them not to be. Oftentimes we incentivize performance and productivity above all else. So here's what you can acquire and achieve for yourself or the team so you'll be promoted. I think we need to redefine success in terms of how success is delivered. I mean, we should not be promoting people who just perform well. We should be including treating people well and caring for people and performing well as holistic high performance. And so we've developed systems that tend to reward performance and productivity over how the performance is achieved.
That makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate how you brought up the soft skills and how we kind of dismiss those as either those are just obvious or they're not really worthy of our investment. I've noticed that the more I teach leadership, that there's often, even at the end of a class or at the end of a semester or quarter, people will kind of ask like, hey, when are we going to get into like the stuff that I need to go do? And there is this bias towards the smart skills or So I really appreciate you bringing that up because I think there's this tendency to overvalue what we would consider complex or quantifiable things you can immediately quantify versus what we may call soft skills. But I've noticed over time, the people that really master what we would call soft skills are the best leaders, and they get incredible results over time.
Absolutely. When we ask people to think about the best leaders in their lives, and you can do this right now, very rarely do people say, oh, it was the leader who got this quarterly earnings report, or the leader who got had this great product launch, or the leader who did X, Y, and Z. It's things like a leader listened to me when I was struggling and was there for me when I was struggling, when nobody else was.
Yeah.
A leader showed me when I didn't believe in myself, they showed me how what I did made a difference. They named strengths in me I didn't see. They reminded me that I was needed for the bigger mission. Every day they would come in and do that. We see that time and time again, that legacy is built through how you make people feel, not how much you do. But what's ironic is that how much you do is usually dependent on how you make the people under your care feel.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that gets in our way, we look at the lagging indicators and we try to pursue those. Like we try to get the success, the performance, the productivity, versus understanding the leading indicator of all of those things, which is human energy. And I think the best leaders that I've studied, they relentlessly invest in regenerating the human energy needed to accomplish the lagging indicators.
Can you talk a little bit about that for maybe someone who's like, what do you mean by leading and lagging? What is that? What is the distinction between a lead measure and a lag measure?
Yeah, like a lag measure, like employee engagement is a lag measure. It measures something that's already happened. It's a output. It's a feeling. Someone becomes engaged. They care about their work. The leading indicator of that is they must first feel cared for. And they must know that what they're doing matters. For example, engagement, there's 3 predictors. Meaningfulness, I and what I do matter. Safety, I feel like I can bring myself, my ideas, my voice, and not feel under threat. And then availability, I have someone to support me and I have the resources I need. Those are the leading indicators. All of those things are outcomes of mattering. And so when you, as a leader, if you're leading a team or organization, instead of saying, how do I get my people to be more engaged? You should be saying, how do I make sure I'm investing in the leading indicators to make sure everyone around me feels needed, they feel that they matter, they know how what they're doing matters, they feel safe, and they have my support. Productivity is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
The lagging indicator of productivity is human motivation, which is predicted. The number one predictor of human motivation is psychological meaningfulness, which is I and what I do matter. And then if you look at innovation, the leading indicator of innovation is psychological safety. I can speak up, experiment, take risks, make mistakes, and learn from those. So we become more innovative to get to innovation, not innovation. You know, leaders who pursue innovation, we're going to try to be more innovative without pursuing psychological safety first, will likely not be innovative.
Wow. I think I just had an aha moment as you were talking, because often when I have these types of conversations, I put results and relationships against each other. But I think what you just reminded me of is that the results is actually the lagging indicator of investing in the relationships, which is kind of that lead measure. I almost pictured, as you were talking, like a garden. Someone walks up to a beautiful garden and they say, I really want that. Like, how do I get that? And you could easily be like, well, if you want to get that, you need to first get the soil right. You need to give it the right nutrients. You need to get the right plants, the right combination of different things. And then you can get that, but you can't just skip all of the process. And so I really appreciate, because I hope what people are hearing is that it's not that you don't care about results. You absolutely do care about results. You care about the organization getting results and people feeling like they get results as well. But it's a question of, how do you actually get that? How do you actually get people to perform and teams to perform at the highest level?
If you care about results, you will relentlessly care about your relationships. The engine of those results, the engine of a high quality, high performing team is trust. And when we look at the predictors of trust, right, there are four main predictors. Care. You care for me. You have my best interests at heart. Competency. You're actually good at what you do and you show up. Consistency. You're consistent in what you do. And then safety. Researchers, when they look at those four predictors of trust, they find that even if the others are present, even if you're really good at what you do and you deliver consistently, if you don't care for the person and if they're not safe with you, they will not trust you. Trust is almost impossible. Think about it. Have you ever trusted somebody where you felt unsafe with? Have you ever trusted somebody who didn't care for you? I told you I got to do some work with the top 200 leaders, emerging leaders of the U.S. Army. One of the guys was someone who does some of the training curriculum at the Kennedy School for Special Warfare for Special Forces officers. And he actually does the interpersonal skill building training. And he came up to me after and he said, this is giving me some language. This idea of mattering is giving me some language for what we actually do. Because a lot of people think that the key ingredient of a high performing lethal unit behind enemy lines is toughness. But he said, it's not, it's love.
Gosh, it's crazy.
He said, no one is going to sacrifice for me out there if I don't know their kids' names. No one is going to go above and beyond for me if I haven't seen them in a struggle and been there for them. No one is going to support one another if I haven't modeled support. And he's like, I'm really teaching love. I call it interpersonal skills, but I'm really teaching. That's what we're teaching here. And what's the engine of that? Why is that so powerful? It's because it's rooted in trust. We trust people who care for us. And that's why if you're listening and you're thinking this is kind of fluffy, this might be touchy-feely stuff, this is fundamental human. These are fundamental human needs that if we don't meet them, trust is almost impossible.
Are you seeing that this is even more important? And by that, I mean, I recently read Stephen M.R. Covey's book, Trust and Inspire, and he compared and contrasted kind of the the command and control type of leadership that we saw during kind of the Industrial Revolution, when you had like Ford Motor Company, assembling widgets in the
Yeah.
assembly line. Like that was a type of leadership that maybe worked in that moment. But now when you think about the paradigm that people lead in, where things are changing so fast, we have
Yep.
AI disruptions, just political disruptions, environmental. There's so many disruptions happening. Things are so teams are having to be more agile, it seems, than ever before. So I'm wondering if you see this type of leadership, almost like a complete paradigm shift from the command and control type of leadership that may have been appropriate at particular moments. If you're seeing in
Yeah.
the research that it matters more now, perhaps.
Well, there's a reason why the information age ended the industrial age.
Yeah.
It's because we became more connected. And what happens now is, when I was in the industrial age, I could be given just enough money to suffer enough under you, where I could go home and say, oh, I'm content with what I have because I can provide for my family. But the only person I could tell about how terrible my experience was every day was my family. But now I can pick up a phone and look at Twitter or X and look at millions of accounts of people who are not experiencing what I'm experiencing, and that it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
And I don't have to put up with this. And what we're seeing is there's a perpetual increase in choice of where, when, and how to work. We have rising hybrid work models. We have rising levels of gig work. But if you want to look broadly at the future of work, rising educational attainment across the world, rising literacy rates, all of those things indicate people will perpetually and infinitely have more choice for where and how they spend a third of their lives. With more choice comes more discernment. With more discernment comes a focus on how we want to feel in work. So the industrial age is done, in the sense of, we are not in a work as exchange model where you do stuff for me, I exchange and give you enough so you can be satisfied. We're in a model where people are really seeing work as an integral, intertwined part of life again, which actually, Cal, is what it used to be. Work was always an act of community. I was a shoemaker because you needed to walk
Yeah.
around not with bare feet. I grew food so you could eat. Human work was always an act of community. We saw our purpose so clearly. We saw how we mattered. And I think that what we're seeing now is, as people have more space and more choice, people are coming back to that primal need, that primal way work was designed, and saying, do I matter here? And I will say that there is a desperate try to get back to the industrial roots. I don't know if you're seeing some of the articles right now where bosses are taking back that power, mandating people coming back to the office, adopting a more command and control approach. I just saw an article that found that bosses are using that phrase, everyone's replaceable, more and more now. And again, they're focused on lagging indicators. What they don't realize is, when people feel replaceable, they act replaceable, especially with more choice. They leave, they don't commit. So it's antithetical to human psychology. So I think the nature of work has changed. People have more choice. People are searching for meaning more than ever. People feel more lonely and disconnected than ever. And that inevitably is going to change how we have to lead.
You do a great job of explaining this, and you are helping me have better language to understand my own leadership philosophy, because I do think there's a little bit of an instinctual pushback when we think about the lagging indicators that we desire. Like, I want results, I want people to feel engaged.
Yeah.
At least as a leader, I want to feel like I need to go I need to go knock out some emails. I need to go, give some direction. I want to make sure people are on task. And in some ways, and I know you're not completely saying this, in some ways you're saying, actually, the best use of your time is to go build trust, to go build connection, to go, not that those things don't matter, but like, it's almost like a redirection or a refocus of the biggest leverage points to get the desired results for your team and for your organization. And it's a little bit almost counterintuitive, I feel like. So I think you do a really good job of explaining it in a way that at least convinces me of not just the human benefit, because obviously I want people to feel engaged and care, like they're happy at work, but then also we need to get results. but I think you do a good job of explaining how you can really have both.
Yeah, I think you have to have both. And it actually, one of the things that we found is it happens in very small interactions,
Oh,
daily interactions. Um, I'll give you an example of exactly what you're talking about. I work for one of my clients is a big airline, and there's a very high performing team that was close to me at my airport in Denver, and they had a team of cleaners that were very high performing. So these people are contract workers, and when your plane parks at the gate, they go on the plane and they turn it around. And in an airline, turnaround time is everything. If you go into their break room in the tarmac level, they have a digital display that right when a plane parks, a countdown starts. And then they have real-time cleanliness audit stores coming up. So you talk about fast-paced.
yeah,
I mean, turnaround time is how an airline makes any margin
yeah.
environment. And so they knew I lived here. I had worked with them. And so they said, we want you to figure out why they're so high performing.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So I went down there and I got to clean with them for a day. It was interesting. I put on the vest, got to clean.
Yeah.
The first person I met was named Tanya. And Tanya was called the cleanliness support coordinator for the station, the airport. The first thing she did is she brought me to the ticket agent and she commented on how infectious this person's smile was and gave me like a rundown of the ticket agent's bio with the company and all the things she loved working with her. And then we kind of shuffled off into the security line. We went through security. She sought out a TSA agent by name and was asking him about his vacation and how his vacation was because he just got back, and was asking him for his kids by name. We go down the escalator, we get down into the tarmac level. As we're passing one of the cleaning workers, people are bustling in and out. She looks down at him and he's sitting on a chair on his phone. She goes, "Hey, can you show me a picture of your daughter? I want to remember why I'm here today. Why we're here today."
Wow.
He beams, he pulls up his phone, he shows her a picture of his daughter, 9 years old. She lives in Ghana, Africa. He's trying to send money back to support her. We go into the break room, we go around the table. She starts going around telling me what she appreciates about each of them. And as she's passing all these people, she's asking one question: "What do you need from me today?" And then we went on and cleaned the airplanes. She has the highest cleanliness audit scores in the airline. That's what all she did differently. And what's really remarkable about this story is she was not their leader.
Oh, wow.
They are a contract crew. She has no supervisory responsibilities over them. But what she did is she made the choice to lead. She made the choice in her daily interactions to make them feel seen, heard, valued, and needed. So what do you think happened when one of them was not meeting their quarterly efficiency goals? Well, they didn't want to let Tanya down,
Yeah.
because they knew they mattered so much to Tanya. So she told me at the end, she goes, when people have a performance issue, they're not afraid to talk to me. They come and talk to me because they know I love them. She told me my job is relationships. Everything else, including quality, follows. And her supervisor told me that she's in the top 10% of leaders in the company. I asked her how she developed that approach. She said, my supervisor's always there for me. Always makes time to see me and listen to me. And that's how mattering begets mattering. I share that story because that's a fast-paced environment, but she optimized her interaction so everyone around her felt valued, knew how they added value, and the result was the results.
That is such a great story, and it's encouraging too, because I think a lot of us picture connection having to be like several hours of connection, and I'm sure those can be good. Maybe you're doing that every so often, but what you're describing, what I'm hearing, and make sure I'm not misunderstanding this, but it could just be quality over quantity. It's those little interactions, and in those moments, connecting, asking the right questions. I love that question of, what do you need from me? How can I make your job easier? How can I make your life better? Any barriers I can take down?
Yeah.
And just locking eyes with someone, that 3D connection. It sounds like those small moments can really add up, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. And that, like, asking a question is a skill. So instead of, hey, how are you? Or how's it going? Or I hear a lot of leaders start a meeting saying, hey, how's everybody doing? Good? Imagine if you weren't good. Would you be like, not me?
You've already told me.
Or
That.
I hope everybody's doing well. Like, if I'm not doing well and I'm under your care, the last thing I need is your hope, right? I need your support. So there's a lot of these things we do that actually don't give us the data to see people and to lead them. So asking clear, open, and exploratory questions is powerful. Like, what is your attention today? What have you been thinking about most today? What are you struggling with? How can I help? I know Shackleton, who was the leader of the Endurance, one of the only Antarctic expeditions that didn't lose a single crew member. He would go around with his diary and he would say, "What would you do if you were me? Right? What would you do if you were me?"
Such a good question. Yeah.
Well, what are you worried? What are you worried about? How can I help? And he'd also ask them when their birthdays were. And he'd write them down, and he'd have birthday parties for everybody on the ice. He also wrote down who they loved from back home. And on Saturday afternoons, when he was in a survival mode, he had them give a 3-hour toast to the people they missed from back home on Saturday afternoons. Right? He deeply noticed them. And that's that first practice area that we find that great leaders do, is they're noticers. I worked with an ER nurse who had a little memo pad, and she would write down positive patient outcomes from the shift before. And for the huddle they have for the next shift, she would leaf through this little memo pad and say, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, here's what I noticed last night. This person worked on this case, and I watched him walk out of here today. And I just want to remind us all of why we're here." But she wrote it down. She had a practice of noticing, sharing back, asking better questions. All of these things can happen in very small micro moments. But if you think really about the leaders who make a difference for you, it's just that they do this with intention, attention, and skill.
Yeah. I love this. You're getting into a lot of the kind of more actions that we can take to show people that they matter, which is great. And I love that we've gone here. The 3 things that you highlight are noticing, affirming, and then needing. And correct me if I have that wrong. But that what you're demonstrating for me is like those having some really good questions that I have in my hip pocket that I can help people feel noticed and actually notice people are really important. What do you say though, just to maybe push back against a mindset out there? What do you say to the leader who's like, I got a lot on my mind. I'm really busy. Like, I do care about my people, but if I'm honest, like, I don't have the time to, like, if they unload something on me that's really deep, really hard, like, I only have a few minutes. Like, that's just if I'm being, because I'm juggling a lot as a leader. I got to go to the next meeting. I'm trying to make sure that we're all on task and on priority. So if I stop by and I say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I do care how you're doing, but you might need to talk for an hour about what happened over the weekend and something hard. So what do you say to that leader who maybe has that in their mind right now?
It's good to know the difference between caring about somebody and caring for them. So you're accurate in saying you can care about somebody from a distance, but you cannot care for somebody without deeply understanding them. You cannot care for somebody without getting up close. You can't care for anything without understanding it, whether it's a house plant or a person, right? We have to, if you're caring for a plant, for example, and I've killed a lot of plants, you have to deeply understand what light it needs, what kind of water it needs. The same is true with people. So if you're not investing this time, you're actually missing the data you need to lead people well. I'll introduce a practice here that's an example of a quick practice that makes a big difference. There was a hospital in Denmark. It was an eye hospital. They were having low patient satisfaction scores, really difficult time with engagement, high burnout. And there was researchers that were working with them, and they were inspired because they were on a KLM flight, and they saw the crew get together. At the beginning of the crew, they did this very simple check-in. They had each of the crew members go around and do a green, yellow, red check-in. So green means you're good, you're online. Yellow means you're a little bit offline. Red means you may be overloaded and stressed. And what they used that for is they used it for where they would station people on the plane. So they're not going to put someone near the emergency exit and responsible for exiting procedures if that day they were a red. This has come from the military as well. They use that data to lead people. Well, they went to this eye hospital and they introduced this. So at the beginning of the nursing huddles, one half of the hospital, they just did a green, yellow, red check-in. Green is you're good, you're online, you're here. Yellow, again, you're a little bit reactionary. Red means you're offline, really overloaded, burnt out. They didn't try to change the color. It wasn't about psychoanalyzing people, having a big therapy conversation. It was simply about, let's figure out where you're at today.
Yeah.
Who am I working with today? And they measured them over 6 months. The group that did this check-in had objectively higher patient satisfaction scores, much lower burnout, much higher engagement than the group that did not do this. The researchers wanted to know why. And they all said some version of, we're having better conversations in our break room. Now, why is that? Well, Cal, let's say you and I do this check-in that takes about a minute, and you're a red. You and I are walking to the next meeting together. Am I likely, now that I have that knowledge, to look at you and think, I hope Cal figures that one out? Right. Or am I more likely to say, Cal, I noticed you're a red. Anything I can do to help? If you're a red today, do you think I'm going to vigorously debate a project you're working on in front of everybody that day? Probably not. I'm probably going to save that for a one-on-one. If you don't check in on how your people are doing, you don't have that data to lead them well. You may be extracting the energy they need to actually perform. And a lot of leaders say to me, Zach, well, if I do this, I'm opening up a can of worms.
Right.
The worms are already in the can. They're already there. And if someone can't speak up to you, they're going to speak out to someone else. They're going to gossip. They're going to complain. They're going to blame. They're going to withdraw. And at some point, they're going to leave. One of the most astounding findings that I've read about why high performers leave and when high performers leave is that almost half of high performers who leave say that their manager didn't have a meaningful conversation about how they were doing in the 3 months prior to leaving. Right? You're missing data, and that could prevent high performers from leaving. That can prevent burnout. That can prevent the depletion of the energy you need to accomplish the things that you're thinking about. So again, think about it as data to lead people. And you can also set boundaries. You can tell your people, we're not going to figure out all of your issues right now. Right? And you can say this, but it's very important for me to understand how you're doing on a daily basis. It's very important for me and this team to do that, because the better we understand and support one another, the better our work will be. Yeah. And I think if you set that expectation, those boundaries, this can be really powerful.
That's really helpful and very practical. It makes me actually think of in Zach in the military. I started out as an infantry officer, and one of the things we would do between missions is we would quickly look at our ammunition and say, are you green? Are you amber? Are you red? It's just a matter of, hey, how much ammunition do you have for the next?
Oh, interesting.
For the next objective? Because if I'm amber, that means, okay, I need to cross level some ammunition to you. Or if you're red and I'm expecting you to provide fire support for the maneuver element, that's not going to work out very well. So it's very practical. I think you can think about that. It also highlights to me that we don't lead machines, we lead humans. And as humans, sometimes we show up red, sometimes, and that could be for a variety of different reasons. It could be, I didn't sleep well last night, my kids were up, I'm sick, I just had been going super hard, I just feel off. What do you say though? Maybe there's a leader out there who's thinking, okay, but I got someone on my team who's always red. What do you say to that leader?
That is fantastic data. Think about if you weren't doing these check-ins. Because now you can say, hey, I've noticed that we've been doing this check-in and you happen to be red a lot. And what can I start doing, or what do I need to stop doing to create an environment where you can get to green? What do we need to do to get to green? Now, if you didn't have that data, you can't open up that conversation that way. I had a group of scientists that I worked with who actually put they were kind of making a joke about it, but when teams make a joke about this, I know it's part of the culture. Like they'll joke like, I'm a red today, I'm a red every day, and they're kind of joking. That's actually a good thing. Yeah. Think about that. They're actually normalizing emotions, like normalizing talking about it. But they put it up on their cubicles, and it was always red. It was red for like 3 months, all of them. And so they finally had a meeting where they all got together and they'd be like, what is going on here? Like, what is really going on here? What's everybody thinking but no one's saying? Because obviously something's happening. And the leader had this conversation, and they basically said that they were overscheduled with meetings so they could never work on their projects. So they always felt behind. Yeah. And so they got together and actually collectively thought about how they can schedule time, deep work time, to work on publications they're working on that are protected from meetings. And what do you think happened over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah.
they just having the conversation, they started shifting their colors again and joking about it.
Yeah.
But that's the power of this.
I love it. It makes, I think Brene Brown, in one of her episodes, she was talking about how her and her husband would say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how are you at this moment? And, sometimes her husband would be like, oh, I'm at a 5, or I'm at a, and it just allowed them to know, like, do I have that hard conversation right now? Or do I give you some
Absolutely.
tough feedback right now? Or maybe I wait until you've got a good night's sleep before I lead in. So that's a very practical way that leaders can understand their teams and know their teams. So in the last few minutes we have, can you share just some other specific actions that leaders can do under this kind of notice, affirm, need, like people feeling noticed, affirmed, and needed in the organization to help people feel
Yeah.
like they matter?
Yeah, so noticing again is paying deliberate attention and offering actions that you show them that you're paying attention through some of the things that we've talked about. When you notice people deeply, you can actually meaningfully affirm them. Affirmation is showing people how their unique gifts and talents and strengths make a unique difference. It's showing them the downstream impact of the work. There's two primary ways to do this. One is to make sure you're revealing and naming people's unique gifts and talents. There are 4 gifts everybody brings to us every day. Their strengths, what they love to do and what they're good at, their perspective, the way they see the world, their wisdom, what only they have learned through their position or their career, and then their purpose, the unique impact that they make. And so when you're giving feedback, when you are thanking people, making sure to very specifically name those gifts. Is very powerful. But the second piece to that is making sure you're showing people the downstream impact they make. When you're a leader of a unit, when you're the leader of a team, you're in a privileged position because you get to see like what happens when one of your people doesn't do something.
Yeah.
And you get to see the downstream domino impact of when they do something well. But oftentimes the person doing it doesn't get to see that.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest practices that I could recommend is collecting and telling stories of people's significance. Like collect and tell stories of the downstream impact of people's work. One of the people I worked with was a facilities maintenance worker. He manages all the facilities management workers for the National Park Service.
Oh, wow.
And we think of national parks, we think of like sunsets and hikes and awe, but there are people who have to maintain infrastructure in some of the most inhospitable places in this country. And this person is responsible for those people. It's actually a pretty low morale, high turnover occupation. But he had this park that had incredibly high turnover. And we went in and I love outliers. So I was like, what is going on? Like this, they have high morale, low turnover with this unit. And the supervisor says, oh, I just have a look what you did today. Look what you did this week email I send out every Friday and they love it. And I was like, tell me more about that. He says, I walk the park and I take pictures of bridges they repaired, projects they worked on. If there's a shorter line to the bathroom because they repaired one of the bathrooms, I take a picture of it. I attach them to an email and all I write at the top of the email is, look what you did.
Wow.
And what I love about that practice, and it's emblematic of what great leaders tend to do, is he showed them the indisputable evidence of their significance.
Yeah. That's great.
There's no one on that team that can be like, hey, yeah, I really don't matter here. No, you're looking at a picture of literally a visitor walking over a bridge you repaired, right? So that's that affirming piece. And then when you show people how their uniqueness makes a unique difference, they start feeling needed. And feeling needed is making sure everyone feels relied on and indispensable. A great practice there is to think about your bigger purpose, your bigger mission. Does everybody measurably know how they're indispensable to it? When John F. Kennedy was launching the Apollo missions, and this is a classic story that you've probably heard, but John F. Kennedy went to a janitor at the Space Center and said, hey, what do you do here? And the janitor very calmly said, oh, I'm putting a person on the moon, and then went back to his work. Well, Andrew Carton at the Wharton School did an archival study of how NASA managers figured this out, how to get people connected to a bigger purpose that no one knew was possible. So the management challenge at NASA was you have 300,000 contract workers, many of whom would not be contracted with NASA when they put a person on the moon. Some were sewing lunar lander parachute seams. Some were driving trucks transporting goods. Some were janitors, astronauts, chemists, physicists. How do you get all these people to believe in something that no one knew was possible? And they probably wouldn't be around when it happened. What he found through looking at photos, meeting agendas, is that in almost every blackboard at NASA facilities, every work group had a ladder to the moon. Ooh. At the bottom of the ladder was their tasks that they were working on that month. The next rung up was a tangible, measurable objective that task was needed for. The next rung up was an objective that objective was needed for, all the way up to putting a person on the moon by the end of the decade to advance science.
Wow.
And what I love about that is they didn't just tell people that they mattered. They showed them exactly how they mattered. No one could look at that ladder that month and say, what I'm doing isn't needed. When people feel replaceable, they will act replaceable. Don't be surprised when they do. But when people feel irreplaceable, they tend to act that way. So I'll leave you with 5 words you could say to anybody. I mean, think of people you rely on your team. And think of the last time you explicitly told them. Again, there's often a gap in how we feel about people and what we say to them, what we do. And try to use these 5 words that our interviewees tell us help them feel that they matter. If it wasn't for you. Hey, I just want to let you know, if it wasn't for you, completing this mission wouldn't have been possible.
Wow.
And you will see the power of mattering.
Yeah. Wow, Zach, this has been so rich. I have really enjoyed. In real time, you just taught me a masterclass on this. You made me believe even more in this work. And so thank you for putting all the time and energy into this work, for making it public. Thank you for investing in this group of leaders today. Dr. Zach Mercurio, the author of The Invisible Leader, the author of The Power of Mattering. Zach, anything else you want folks to know on the way out?
Yeah, I would leave you with a question that people have asked me this question a lot lately. Like, what's the first thing I can do? That was kind of an overwhelming hour, all these things I should be doing.
That's great.
And I think the first thing is to ask your people. You could start with your family if you want, or your relationships, but ask the people you care about. When you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing?
Ooh.
And take note. Take note, and then do more of those things.
That is so good. Well, we'll leave it there. Zach, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed getting to chat with you today.
Thanks, Cal.
Well, hello, my friend. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end of this episode. If you are someone that'll listen to an hour-long podcast about leadership, then I would bet on you. You're someone who has potential. There's a big difference between performance and potential. Potential is often based on your mindset towards growth, the level of humility you have. And so I just want to commend you for sticking around. You're someone I would bet on. I want to give you just a few practical things from the conversation before you head out today. Number 1 is start meetings with a real check-in, not the obligatory, hey, how's everybody doing? But ask maybe that technique that Zach laid out. What's your current energy today? Is it green, yellow? Is it red? And then just listen. You don't need to fix things, but it just helps you gain awareness. And then you can start to see trends over time. Also, upgrade your questions. Don't ask the predictable question of, hey, how's it going? Instead, ask a different question. Hey, what's been on your mind most today? Or what's one thing currently draining energy from you? The idea is to ask better questions and we get better answers, and people feel like we're being more thoughtful because we are. One thing you can also do is notice specific things happening in your organization and call them out. Don't just say, hey, great job. Say, I noticed how you stayed calm when the room got tense and that changed the outcome. Or I noticed specifically how you added value in that meeting when you did this, or when you didn't do this, or when you weren't here, we really noticed because you add value. Another thing you can do is affirm someone's impact, not just their effort. Show them, as Zach talked about, show them the downstream effect of what they do. Because you did this, this happened. And what you're doing is you're proving to people that they really matter. You're making the case to them with specific evidence. It's hard for them to argue, even internally, that they don't matter and that you don't see it. Another thing you can do is explicitly let people know that they are needed. And you could say those 5 words that Zach laid out. If it wasn't for you, then, and then just finish the sentence with real evidence. of how they have impacted the organization. And then finally, one reflection question just to ask you on your way out. When do the people that you lead know, not hope, but know that they matter to you? What we're doing with that question is we're trying to reflect on and think about, when do I turn my good intentions into actions? Because that's really what being intentional is all about. I know you have good intentions, but how are you making the people feel that they matter to you? What are you doing day to day? So I hope you go and have a great week. Thanks so much for sticking around and being here for this episode. A special thanks to Zach for writing such a great book and spending time with us today. And shoot me an email at cal@calwalters.me if you want to connect further, or if you want to share what you learned from this episode. Also, if you want to work with me one-on-one, I am opening up just a few one-on-one coaching spots. You can find the link to apply to that in the episode description. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Remember, life is short. Let's go make it count.